This video is going to be covering how to prepare your designs for print. Before we get started, it's important that you understand a few key terms. The first two terms kind of go hand in hand. The first one, crop marks, are these small little lines at the corners of your design. This helps you see where the page edge is. From here, you can use these small little lines to help line up your ruler and cut out your design accurately. The next term is the bleed. This is going to be the area where your design will extend to. This is done so that if there's a small error on your part when cutting, or a machine, that you're not completely screwed and have to redo the print. Essentially, this is done so that there are no unprinted edges on your design. Next is the safe area, and while this doesn't play a huge role for us right now, this is something that comes up a lot when working in the real world. Essentially, this just refers to an area where no matter how it's cropped, the design and the important information will remain intact. It's important that you don't extend the design all the way to the page edge in case there's a small oopsie when cutting. Finally, we have the slug. And this is going to be an area outside of the bleed, and this is essentially where any printer's notes will be put. Again, this isn't something super important for this assignment, but is going to be a term that you'll hear when working in the real world. With this information in mind, we're going to go ahead and create a new document. We go to New, and we put in the dimensions of our design. You'll see right here you have a bleed, and I've decided to put it at 0.125, or 1/8 inch. This is a pretty standard bleed, and so if there aren't any specifications, I recommend at least putting it to 0.125. You'll also note that it's in the RGB color mode. This is something that might seem a little odd considering we've talked about RGB being dedicated for just computers and screens. This is something to keep in mind when utilizing digital printers. Without going into too much detail, just keep in mind that an RGB is really important to make sure that you're getting as accurate colors as possible. However, you won't be able to get the bright neon colors that you might think of when you think of RGB. You'll want to make sure that you tone down some of those expectations, but still use RGB for the most accurate colors possible. From here, we're going to go ahead and create a new document, and you'll see that the bleed has already been added for us. I'm going to go ahead and pop in my design, and I've decided to have the background go all the way to this bleed. This is important so that when I cut my final design, I don't end up with any little slivers of white. It just doesn't look very nice. From here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to print. Now, because I've made the artboard what the final intended trim design will be, I can go ahead to Marks and add trim marks. This will put in, and I'm not sure if you can see, but I'll show you an example a little bit later. It has put in the little crop marks. This will help me so that I don't have to worry about getting out a ruler and measuring. It's already done the hard work for me. Because I already put in a bleed, I'm going to go ahead and just leave this checked. From here, I could go ahead and press print. If you aren't able to print directly from your computer, it would be a good idea to save this as a PDF with those same little bits of information included, which I'll show you how to do now. We'll go to File, Save As, I'll put the name of the piece, and I'll put my name. This will help whoever's printing my file be able to identify what it is really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and select PDF, and I'm going to press Save. When saving a PDF, you'll be prompted with this window. There's a couple of things to note. Similarly, we'll go to Marks and Bleeds, and we'll make sure that trim marks are selected, as well as document bleed settings. Something that's a little bit unique for PDFs is this box right here that says Preserve Illustrator Editing Capabilities. This is something that is up to you as to whether or not you want to keep. Allowing the Illustrator editing capabilities means that you could open up the PDF in Illustrator and be able to modify everything just like you would an AI file. If you're sending something that you don't want to be modified, I would really recommend unselecting this. Another reason why it might be a good idea to unselect the preserving of Illustrator editing capabilities is that doing so makes the file much smaller. If you're working with lots of images, gradients, details, and textures, that will really make your file huge, which is not ideal when sending over the internet or when trying to share with others. This just makes things a little bit smaller, tighter, and cleaner. From here, we'll save as a PDF. I've just opened up the file, and here you can see these little marks which represent the crop marks. If I were to hand this to someone who was printing it, they would be able to hit print, make sure that they are not scaling, and they will be good to go. From here, I'm going to show you how to properly cut and trim a design so that you get the best results possible. To get started, I'm going to cover the cardinal rule of cutting out your work. The first thing is that you should be using an X-Acto knife, and every time you start a new project, you should be putting a new blade into your X-Acto knife. This ensures that you will have clean, sharp cuts and you don't have to pull at the paper, which could cause ripping. The next thing to note is that it's best to use a ruler with a cork backing. This means that it's not going to be sliding around, and actually it takes quite a bit to make it move and slide. A secure foundation is key in order to getting super strong, clean cuts. Now, because this is a white background, you might be tempted to take out your pencil and trace out the whole square. This is something that I highly discourage, as it could actually end up leaving marks on your paper. Even if it is a pencil, sometimes, especially when working with very colored and heavy inked paper, it will lighten up the ink and actually be visible. To get around this, you're going to use your ruler to line up the crop marks. I personally recommend using the ruler to cover your artwork. This way, if you cut and it goes a little off kilter, it's not going to be cutting into the work that you've just printed. From here, I'm going to line up, take my X-Acto knife, and do one simple cut. I'm not bringing it all the way to the edge, because if I did, I would no longer have access to these little crop marks, and that's going to be important when I rotate my design and make the next cut. Again, if you have a sharp blade, you shouldn't run into any issues when the blade comes in contact with the first cut mark that you've made. From here, I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the cutting. And because my blade was new, it comes out easily and I don't have to recut anything. And this is my final design. I'm going to show you again using the one with the black background. From here, you might be able to notice that the black extends a little bit beyond the design. This is that bleed that we were talking about. I'm going to go ahead, make sure that my design and ruler are lined up exactly, and make a very confident single cut. Another trick is to make sure that you're applying pressure at both ends of the ruler. This way, when you're pulling, that force doesn't accidentally move the ruler. And here we have another perfectly cut design. From here, you might notice the little crop marks a little easier. If this is still too faint, you can always modify the thickness of the line as well as the color of the line in order to be able to see it much clearer.